Composition is everything in photography. It doesn't matter if you're shooting black and white or color photos. It's how we form narratives in our photos by choosing what parts of the world belong in our frame. Composition should not be overlooked, and it's what separates photographers and non-photographers. Now imagine you get a family member who knows nothing about photography, and you also get a photographer to shoot the same subject on a phone. Who do you think is going to take a better photo? The photographer. Why? It's not because of the tools or whatever features they're using. They're both using the same camera. It's because the photographer knows how to frame a subject. They know what angle looks best and how to position them within the frame. Do you go closer to the subject so that they appear bigger and that you're putting more of an emphasis on them? Or do you go back and try and make the subject a little bit smaller because perhaps you want that feeling of distance, or you're trying to show the scale between the subject relative to a building or another subject? Do you place the subject right in the middle to show how the world revolves around them, or do you intentionally cut them off at the sides to create a little bit of unease? Composition is everything. In my opinion, it's what sets apart photographers and great photographers. Anyone can be reactive and snap a photo of a subject. It does take skill to hone a sense of timing, so I am not dismissing that. But to be able to frame a subject in a way that is intentional throughout the entire frame, that will always produce a more powerful image than one where its surroundings aren't carefully considered. Composition is what allows us to arrange subjects in our frame, creating a scene where we can create balance and to guide the viewer's eye. There is a quote about photography that I often think about. Photography is as much about what we exclude from the frame as it is about what we include. As photographers, our job is to tell stories with our photographs, but how do you do that effectively within a single frame? How much of the world do you choose to include? When we're framing, we're choosing what subjects gets to be in our shot. We're often removing distractions and deciding what gets emphasized and what gets left out. So this is why composition is so important. How do you frame a subject in a way that communicates what you're trying to say? Now, this doesn't have to be a deep, meaningful photojournalistic story, but what is it that you're trying to communicate or show? And most importantly, why are you taking that photo? Sure, the subject you're looking at is beautiful or interesting, but you have to show how it is beautiful and interesting. Let's take a look at Alex Webb's work. Alex Webb is one of my favorite photographers because of his use of color and composition. He is known for his deliberate and layered photographs, and he's just a master at organizing chaos and many different subjects into a single frame that feels very powerful. He also uses color to add to that emotion, and his timing is just impeccable. I'll be showing some examples from his book, The Suffering of Light. This is one of Alex Webb's most known photographs, and it's striking because of how everything is laid out and its use of color. You can see that blue is quite dominant throughout. The ball, the t-shirts, the shorts, and the accents on the building and the column. It's just spectacular. There are a lot of subjects happening in the photo, but I love it because it just gives you so much to look at throughout the photo. My eye is immediately drawn to this spinning ball right at the center. I look at the boy that's spinning it, and it just feels fascinating. Right behind him is another boy watching intently, standing on the ridge of a column. To the left, another boy is in mid-interaction with a toddler. Slowly, your eyes kind of move through all the subjects from front to back, and the photograph feels balanced despite everything that's going on. The subjects are placed almost equally from each other, and it overall just feels very pleasing. Alex Webb does a great job of framing a whole scene so that you can get a feel for the people, their relationships, and their sense of place. This is a very powerful and emotional photograph. It's documented at a memorial for victims of army violence. Compositionally, it does a great job of leading your eyes from the frame in a Z pattern. From the bottom right, diagonally across, and then straight to the left here. You can see these people carrying these coffins above their heads, and there are a lot of them. Alex uses scale here to emphasize emotional impact. He deliberately pulls back to capture the whole scene. You know, people lining up side by side up the stairs, and, you know, others just watching from the ground. And this whole building kind of looming in the background. He's showing a very vast crowd in a very organized way. And it's just a striking photo with tremendous depth, both emotionally and physically. This is a unique and creative composition. Alex Webb is composing reflections here using subframing. Within the scene, he's created another scene inside the mirror that almost feels like a painting. His use of color is excellent as always. The bold red border complements the green of the mountains and the grass beautifully. The sense of timing in the framing here is just remarkable. This is one of my favorite Alex Webb photographs. I just find this photo so heartwarming. There are 3 subjects in the frame: the couple on the right, the silhouettes in the middle, and the man with the book covering his head on the left. Even though they're placed fairly evenly throughout the frame, there's still real depth. The silhouettes indicate that they're further away. But what I love most is the selection of subjects. I'm not sure whether it was intentional or not, but to me, this photograph feels like a progression of time. The young couple on the right, a father holding his young daughter in the middle, and the older man on the left. It reads like a passage of time, almost like a metaphor for life itself. This photo is also a great example of composing with light and shadow. The light isn't just a technical element here, it adds as a visual anchor to the story. Alrighty, we are outside and I'm just going to try and just take a walk with you guys and to show you how I approach my composition. So I'll just try and show my thoughts as I'm taking a photo. And yeah, I mean, we're exploring Junction Wallace Emerson, which is a very like industrial area. I really like this hoop here. I'm gonna take a photo of this actually. I really like the overhead wire, so I'm just trying to display that. And actually, I'm gonna step back and get this graffiti in as well. Oh, I just love the red against the blue and how the tree shadow is casting on that building. So I'm gonna try and capture it. Right now, I'm just trying to compose the entire shadow on the building in the frame, and I'm adding a little bit of the tree on the left here just to add a little bit of context, but the main subject is the shadow over here. And then I'm just kind of moving around, experimenting to see if there's a better frame, but I think overall it's just going to be the building here. Now I'm walking across the road just to see if I can get a different angle. I noticed the signage, which caught my eye, so quickly took a picture here. It's alright, but I think I'm going to try a different angle. Remember, you can always work a scene, so I'm going to try to include all these elements, the signage, the tree, and the shadow on the building. So I'm composing for all of that to see if I can get a better composition. Yeah, I think I prefer the first photo, but overall, off to a good start. I've been meaning to revisit this signage. I've been here before, but it was on a cloudy day, so I wanted to come back on a sunnier day so that the sun can kind of give a little bit of warmth to the signage in this building over here. I really like this old signage here, and I like how the light is just kind of shining directly on a diagonal over here, so I'm just trying to frame this against the sky. Now I'm just crossing over the road here just to try and get a little bit of a further angle. Nice, now we can kind of see way more. I am shooting with a 28mm, which is a little bit wide, especially if you're shooting at a little bit of a distance. So I have to take that into consideration when I am framing a photo. So since I'm a little bit further, what can I do? I can add a little bit of more context of the houses over to the right here. And I'm still going to have this main building as the largest part of my frame to indicate that it is the main subject. I'm going to try and balance it so I have a little bit of the sky here, but not too much sky. And I'm trying to make sure all my lines are straight and leveled in camera as best as I can possibly do. I am just crossing over and trying to get more angles. So just trying to work the scene here again. Feel free to take multiple angles of the same subject. If you're shooting digital, you should definitely take multiple photos of the same subject from different angles just because you have that unlimited space. I encourage you to do it if you're shooting with film, but I know it is a little bit expensive. But if you do see a subject that is worth capturing, you should definitely work the scene just because you might find a better composition by, experimenting and playing around with different angles. I am just getting a close-up of the signage here. I really like how the red Coca-Cola signage kind of matches the red front door, so I am framing a little scene here. And then I'm just gonna get a little bit closer to get more of a detailed shot. I really like all of these old posters and signage that's kind of built up over the years, and so I'm just gonna get a close-up here to kind of showcase that. I really love the texture. Now I'm just gonna move along to the side here. I love a good corner angle here. I think it's kind of interesting with how the red Coca-Cola signs kind of mirror each other, and it could be kind of interesting because the light kind of hits the one side of the building and spills a little bit over on the other, but yeah, just trying this out. And then once I've done that, I'll just kind of take a step back and get a little bit more of the house in frame, just to see if that worked a little bit better. Okay, now that I've shown you how I compose my photographs, let's talk about some common composition mistakes. Number one is clutter. And what happens when there's too much happening in a scene? It all just kind of blurs together and the viewer doesn't know where the focal point is, and it just overall becomes a very uninteresting photo. When we don't know what the focal point is, it's hard to engage with it, and so it's just not as impactful. So instead, try and organize all of the different elements. If one subject drew your eye to the photo, start with that. Make sure that focal point is obvious, and then you can slowly look around you and see if you can start adding more elements, slowly but intentionally. If you're trying to build a scene, you want to make sure that the other elements that you're adding to the scene is relevant to your main focal point. Number two is poor subject placement. Sometimes you can recognize the main subject, but position them poorly in frame. For example, this may be a really unflattering angle, or they're placed somewhere where the horizon is just going through their head and it's just overall very distracting. Or the subject is just blending into the background because they're all very similar colors. You want to try and consider all of these different elements, try and have good contrast, and to have them balanced within the frame. So if they're blending into the background, let's try a different angle. Maybe the other side of the subject may be better, or maybe you just need to place them differently in the frame. Try and experiment with it and see how they can be better placed in the frame where the focus is on them, rather than having, visual distractions. Number three, lack of depth. So sometimes a photo can look very flat. You're looking at a photo of a single subject and the background is entirely blurred, or it's just a very solid background. While sometimes that can be very effective, it can feel very flat. It just feels more like a snapshot and not really a whole scene. And to build more of the world and to add more context, you can add more layers. And this can be, for example, a foreground, middle ground, and background. Not every photo needs all three of those layers, but having multiple elements or multiple subjects in a frame can make the image feel visually richer and just more alive. So the fourth mistake when it comes to composition is when a subject is too small in the frame. As a viewer, when we're looking at a photograph and when we can't properly decipher what that subject is, it probably means you haven't gone closer enough. We want our photographs to feel engaging and immersive, and we want to properly understand what is happening in the scene. So if your image doesn't feel as impactful, or your subjects feel a little bit tiny and you feel like it's not quite interactive, it's probably because you just need to get a little bit closer. And for some people, it's just easier to kind of crop in post, and that is an option that I use as well, but I would encourage people to get it right first in camera. And so this is where kind of focal lengths come in. And so I want to encourage you to find a focal length that works best for you. And for some people, this might be having a little bit of a tighter lens because they prefer shooting at a little bit of a distance. Obviously, don't be weird about it, but try and find a focal length that works best for you. For me personally, I love using wider lenses like the 28mm or like the 35mm, just because it kind of forces me to be in the scene a little bit more, and I love having a little bit more context within my photographs. Try and find the focal length that works best for you and make sure that you are getting close enough to your subjects so they can appear a little more visually prominent in the image, if that makes sense. I want to encourage you to think beyond, the rule of thirds and simple leading lines and symmetry. Instead, think about depth and layers and dynamic symmetry, balance without it looking so obvious. Think about tension and visual weight. Now, I'm not saying the more layers a photo has, the more effective it is, because that's certainly not the case. It certainly is harder to frame multiple subjects, but it has to be relevant to what you're trying to convey. Composition matters, but what matters even more is how an image feels. You could have the best composition in the world with a million different elements, but if the viewer has no idea what you're trying to say with the work, then it's not a very impactful photograph. My piece of advice is to just look at a lot of good photographs, browse through photo books, take your time with them, and try and analyze what you really like about that photo and what you can take from it. If you love composition, ask yourself why that works, and then try and bring that into your own work. Not copying, but taking inspiration from it. That is my crash course on composition and how I approach it, but I want to leave you with one final thought. There are a ton of technical rules when you first start out in photography, and they are very helpful for learning the fundamentals, but if you really want to go beyond that, you have to learn in what situations when to break it. Rules like the rule of thirds, symmetry, and leading lines are all great starting points, and they exist because they work, and I even still use them today. But the most memorable photographs are often the ones that break them deliberately, or they go beyond just the obvious. Once you understand why a rule works, you'll know exactly when to ignore it. Composition is like a language. The more you practice it, the more fluent you will become, and more naturally your instincts will kick in when you're out shooting. You won't always have time to think, which is why a lot of great photographers say to act on your intuition. The more you do it, the more you will get a feel for the photo and how a subject should be framed. Go out, shoot a lot, experiment, and make a lot of mistakes. Look at great work and let that sit with you. You start creating your own sense of style. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.